Hi, this is Nathan Lehman at the Ultra Running Company, and today we are going to review two shoes in one review, primarily because they're the same shoe, but for the first time, Hoka offers the Speedgoat 4 in a Speedgoat 4 Wide. And so we're going to talk about both of these shoes and hope we can help you find out which one may be right for you. So let's dive right in. Using the Ultra Running Company's categorization, the Speedgoat from Hoka One One is a comfort cushioned, low drop trail running shoe. So what does that mean? Well, let's dive in. We'll start here in the sole of the shoe. As with all Hokas, this looks like a ton of cushion, and guess what? It is. But it's not as much cushion as you'd think, because Hoka sits you right down in what they call kind of a bucket seat. So when they show you this much cushion on the side, your foot is actually landing right about here in the middle. Everything else really holds you in and locks you in, which is absolutely essential for a trail running shoe with this much cushion. And when I say this much cushion, what do I mean? Well, Hoka lists the Speedgoat as having 32 millimeters of cushion in the heel and 28 millimeters of cushion in the forefoot for a 4 millimeter drop. This is one case where I just can't get behind that. We've measured this a ton of times, and basically we actually measured 34 millimeters of cushion in the heel and 28 in the forefoot. Kind of, we measure right here under the center of the ball of your foot, what we call the metatarsals, and right before it starts to ramp up in that kind of Hoka roll. And so we think we've gotten this right, and what that means with our measurements is that instead of a 4 millimeter drop shoe, the Speedgoat 4 is actually a 6 millimeter drop shoe. For those of you looking for nuance on that, we do take out the insole when we measure, and so that is from the base of the shoe at the bottom of the tread right up to the rubber directly beneath the it's called the strobel board, but directly beneath the insole of the shoe. So we find that while Hoka says that this is a maximally cushioned shoe at 32 millimeters in the heel, we find that it's even more at 34 millimeters, and then actually has a slightly larger ramp than Hoka advertises, going down to the same 28 that they measure in the forefoot. What does that mean for you practically? Well, the larger your heel is in a shoe, as you come through to land under your body, the more heel cushion there is compared to the front, the more likely you are to just catch a little bit of that heel. We don't notice it at all running in this shoe. It still feels to me the same as the Speedgoats have in the past, but we've always measured the Speedgoat in that 4 millimeter area on all of the versions, both the standard width that I have in my hand right now and the wide that we'll talk about a little bit more in the future. We're measuring just a millimeter or two more cushion in the heel than we have in the past. So be aware of that when you're running in the shoe. Might be a slightly different feel, but with 1 millimeter to 2 millimeters, you've got to have pretty calibrated feet to tell that difference. The bottom of this shoe is made up entirely of my personal favorite rubber on the market, the Vibram Mega Grip. If you've seen any reviews in the past that I've talked about this, I just think it's a fantastic rubber. It costs a little more. They pay Vibram for it. They put the Vibram logo on the bottom, and basically what it does is, this is a very durable, long-wearing rubber that also sticks quite a bit better when you get in wetter conditions. So slick rocks, rainy conditions, the Mega Grip rubber is still going to grip really well, give you tremendous confidence in where you're landing, and we really like it. There's some minor nuance changes to the placement and the way that these 5 millimeter lugs here on the side and in the middle are placed and designed for this shoe. From a practical running standpoint, again, if you can tell the difference between the lug pattern on the Speedgoat 4 and the Speedgoat 3, you've got a more nuanced feel for the shoe than I do. I find it tacks the ground very well, it holds very well, I don't have any problems with slipping in this shoe, and frankly, I don't notice a difference between the 3 and the 4 as far as the lug placement goes. One place I do notice a difference between the Speedgoat 3 and 4 is that it feels to me as though this midsole rubber, while they talk about it, they don't point out that there are any changes. It feels slightly softer than the Speedgoat 3 in the most recent version. It's still nice and stable from side to side, but just a slightly more pillowy feel. Not as pillowy as the Speedgoat Evo that we reviewed in the past, but definitely a step more pillowy than, less dense, I guess, than the Speedgoat last year. Great ride, very, very comfortable. This is the type of shoe that you can put on your foot and take off 100 miles later and know that you've had a maximally cushioned, soft shoe underfoot. It's a shoe that will allow you to do some of these crazy long runs and be comfortable, yet still be nimble enough that you can run faster races. The Speedgoat's still a shoe that I feel like I can pick through the most technical terrain on. I'm not rolling over things, I'm not crashing through them, I'm really picking my way through. So it's a very, very nice technical shoe in that regard. One of the pieces of that is that the sole of the Speedgoat and the toe box comes to a pretty significant taper. Now, interestingly enough, the taper on the Speedgoat 4 is slightly less pronounced than it was on the Speedgoat 3. That is in response to a lot of folks like myself saying that it was too narrow at the front and over long runs really caused some rubbing on the outside on my kind of third and fourth toe. So I think as a result, Hoka's actually made it slightly rounder here at the top, but don't kid yourself, this is still a tapered toe box, so keep that in mind. Now, one of the reasons that it's not as important to me that they have this taper is because for the first time, Hoka has introduced the Speedgoat WIDE. And what that means is they've added a couple millimeters from the very tip of the toe all the way down to your heel. Now, I do want to point out for you, those of you that have been waiting for an ultra like Hoka, this is not your shoe. This is still a tapered shoe. It still comes to a taper here. What it is slightly wider through the whole thing, and that I believe it's 2 millimeters, although I haven't measured that myself. Every other metric about this shoe is exactly the same as the Speedgoat 4. The stack height's the same, the amount of cushion, the feel of the cushion, everything is the same, but throughout the shoe. Now, why do I keep saying throughout the shoe? Because if you have a truly wide foot, this is a great shoe for you because it's wide the whole way. If you just have a kind of squared off or rounded forefoot and it's a little wider, you're going to feel the fact that this is wider at the heel as well. And so you may need to adjust your lacing, you may need to go with a different shape of the shoe, something with a rounder toe box on the top, if that's your specific issue. This is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful solution for folks with truly wide feet around their whole foot, but again, I want to stress that it does not have a narrow heel as maybe a Topo or an Ultra might have, and just accommodate for that larger toe box. So really, really important distinction there. Just wanting to make sure that the shoe that you buy for yourself is truly a fit. We think that if you've had issues with the Speedgoat in the past, the combination of a slightly less taper and a wider toe box may make this Speedgoat WIDE a really awesome solution for you, but it's something you're going to want to try on your foot in a store to make sure that that's a fit, since it is still tapered. Now, the only other difference is when we talk about weight, Hoka actually lists the weight of their standard width and wide Speedgoats as exactly the same on their website. So the women's sample size is 9.2 ounces, the men's size 9 is a 10.8 ounce shoe. In reality, that can't be. If you make a shoe wider, it's gotta weigh more. So when I measured my size 13 boats, I'm at 13.2 ounces on the Speedgoat 4, and I'm at 13.7 ounces on the Speedgoat WIDE. Now that's a pretty important distinction because both of these shoes are actually heavier than the Speedgoat 3. The Speedgoat 3 in that same size was 0.5 ounces less, so 12.7 ounces for me. And the current one is 13.2 ounces, which means that the wide version is almost a full ounce heavier than the Speedgoat 3 standard width from last year. I know that's a lot of numbers, but just something to keep in mind. If you're moving up to a wider shoe, you're going to get a little more weight there. Now, are either of these heavy shoes? No, they are not. They feel very lightweight when you're running, especially over longer distances. The really fantastic cushion in the shoe makes up for a lot of that extra weight. So with all that said, let's move to the upper. Hoka did make some changes on the materials for the Speedgoat 4. We really like them. It does tend to give you just a little bit more creasing here in the forefoot. It's a single mesh all the way through, whereas the last version was a more open mesh with wider holes basically. Both tend to be, in my opinion, about the same amount of breathability. They both shed water about the same, but this one just comes off with kind of a smoother look to it. It seems like a slightly more finished shoe than the Speedgoat 3. Breathability and water evacuation, as I mentioned, are going to be very, very similar in the two shoes. The big difference is as you're running, as you see, if I start to bend this material tends to push in a little bit more than the prior Speedgoat. So as you're toeing off, depending on where this hits your toes, you may feel, especially in the early miles before you get some break in on the nylon, that you're getting just a little bit of pressure there on your toe area. So keep that in mind. In our experience, it does. This gets a tiny bit softer over time, and that really does go away. But something to be aware of. One other thing to be aware of is the tongue of this shoe. Hoka tends to go back and forth from generation to generation of their shoes between kind of a more padded, more rounded tongue and this kind of thin finish on the tongue. And in our experience, anytime you have a tongue with a thin finish, it creates an edge that has the opportunity to do some rubbing on the top of your instep. And so be aware on this one. Typically, when you have a collar like this, so that goes around, if that straight edge tongue goes over the collar, you have the opportunity to have a little rubbing. If it's cut back, then there generally isn't any rubbing, but you open up more opportunity to feel the laces. So Hoka's gone for kind of a middle of the road. You'll see it doesn't stick out a ton, but there's definitely some push out there. This is kind of a harder material here. So as you're running, make sure that this fits your foot right around the collar and isn't rubbing on it. So those last two things, the feel here and the creasing here, really tiny nuances, but we think they're worthwhile to bring up. Tiny things tend to build up over long runs, which is what this shoe is designed for. One of the other small adjustments that Hoka's made is the Speedgoat in the past has been $140. Speedgoat 4 is $145, so $5 more. We still think it's a fantastic shoe at that price point, although that does bring it within $5 of last year's Speedgoat Evo. If you can get your hand on the Evo, we strongly recommend that. We think it's a fantastic shoe. Really no downside to paying the $5 more for that. If you can't get your hands on the Evo, we think this is a very nice shoe as well. It's going to be more than capable for anything that you're doing. There is the wide version of it, which there was not with the Evo, and the wide version is also $145. So last comment on the feel of the shoe, you're really going to get a nice technical shoe that locks your foot in with the Speedgoat. There have been some changes on the way that they address their lacing over the past couple generations. We think they all fit fantastically well. Really lock your foot in and give you confidence in how you're landing. That combined with the bucket feel of the Hoka and a nice roll off the front on this Speedgoat create a shoe that is capable of running anywhere, from your shortest, faster runs to your longest runs. We think this is a great shoe, remains one of our favorites, some cool updates on it, and we really appreciate the fact that they brought out the wide. We hope you'll come into the Ultra Running Company to try it on. If you can't come visit us, visit your local running store and give them a shot. If you don't have a local running store, please consider going to www.ultrarunningcompany.com, and we'd be happy to send you these shoes so that you can try them out on your feet and decide if the Speedgoat from Hoka One is the choice for you. Please leave comments on our YouTube page. Please subscribe if you get a chance. They tell us that makes a difference in how many people see our reviews, and we'd love to share our opinion with as many people as possible. Go out, run, and while you're doing it, learn to love to run like we do. Thanks for watching and have a great day.